Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 17, Episode 6. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Been a hot minute, at least for the training camp, since we've last talked, Dave. We've had the Steelers night practice. The team was off Sunday, and they are back at it Monday. Dave and I are recording this Sunday evening just after 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so if any news breaks between the time you listen to this and 8 o'clock on Sunday, just a heads up, we may have missed that gap. But Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Sunday to you. Kind of weird the day. It was kind of weird getting used to, or not used to, I shouldn't say used to, because we don't know if it's going to stick on there, but getting accustomed to the Steelers having their Friday night lights practice on Saturday night. And that was a little bit different. And then on top of it there, when is the last time the Steelers had a practice the day after their night practice at the high school off? So that was a little bit interesting as well, too. But here we are. We're more than halfway through training camp at this point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have, six training camp practices that are open to the public remaining at this point. Obviously, the team will get back at it on Monday at St. Vincent College. They'll go Monday and Tuesday. I think they're off Wednesday, or at least that, it's not open. It's just a walkthrough, I would imagine, for the day before the first preseason game, which is on Thursday. And then I imagine they'll be off on Friday and then back at it Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, I reckon, would be the schedule there. Is that kind of the sense that you're getting here?
5 practices left. So Monday, Tuesday, preseason game Thursday, back on the field Saturday, Sunday, Monday, break camp after the practice on the 17th. So that's the schedule.
All right. I added a day in there somewhere. I thought there were 15 practices open to the public, but all right. Well, regardless, they'll be back on the field on Monday, and we're a few more days away from the first preseason game, which I am more than ready for at this point. And I know you are too. And I guess we'll start with the Saturday night practice, right? And kind of get your takeaway. You didn't have 2 fields to watch. That must have been nice. And I do know, though, that kind of your overarching sentiments were that this was not like a Mike Tomlin under lights practice.
Right. And just for clarification, just to kind of go back in time for a second, the reason why you may have added the extra camp day, because there was practice Friday. They closed the campus to non-media, so I could not attend, unfortunately, because there was weather in the region. There is some weather expected Monday and Tuesday. Fingers crossed that we can still get in and observe and report on practice, but it's all a little to be determined. So for the night practice, you're right. It was not quite the same intensity, which has been true of camp overall. Didn't have backs on backers, which was a staple of Mike Tomlin's Sunday or the Friday night under the lights practice. Wasn't quite as physical or intense. Still a spirited practice, still plenty to talk about, still a lot of highlights and lowlights and a lot in our report, but just didn't have that quite same bite for just how special that night is. And it was a good crowd, but I think 5,000 fewer fans this year than last year, which surprised me. I thought for a Saturday, even more people could show up, whatever the reason is. You had a couple less people attending, but practice still a lot of positives. And McCarthy's approach, this always sounds like a critique, and in some ways you can critique it, but it's just to say it's different. There certainly could still be benefits to it in the long run. We may not be able to feel right now in training camp, but just from a viewing experience, this practice just didn't, as the kids say, hit the same.
All right. Let's see. We have some housekeeping to take care of, and being as how we're kind of rolling a recap special edition podcast into a regular podcast, we feel obligated to still shout out our fine folks over there at Touring Plans, Lynn Testa and his folks over there. Anything Disney related, right, Alex? Whether it be Disneyland, Disney World, Disney Cruise Line, that's why people should be going to touringplans.com. Tell them more.
Yeah, good call. Certainly want to shout those guys out, Len Testa and crew in the site touring plans. They use math and science to help families save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World and Disneyland. You can find a crowd calendar on their app showing the best days to visit each park, step-by-step plans to avoid spending hours and hours waiting in line. Thankfully, no line at the Latrobe practice last night because last year I was waiting for a half hour. It snaked around the stadium. I just walked up this year, so kind of spoke to couple less people attending. Back to touring plans, you got views from every hotel room that you can find out about, big discounts on theme park tickets. I was on the website earlier today. They were doing a hotel room review with some photos and just kind of brief synopsis on what the room is like. And so that's all free. There is a subscription for the app to get some more information and really let them be a co-pilot to your next Disney trip. So if you're planning one to Disney, this is the team you want to work with. Reach out to touringplans.com at their website. It's at the top of our training camp diaries. You can also just find them on Twitter at Touring Plans. So we thank them for their continued sponsorship of our training camp coverage.
All right, and got another shout out tonight as well too, and that's to the Steelers PR department. Bert Lawton and Michael Birch allowed our very own Tim Rice access on the field at Latrobe High School on Saturday night there to take some more up close pictures for the site there. So we value the opportunity to do that. Tim most of the time has to obviously take pictures in the stands, and he put in for some credentials for the Saturday night or request for that. And Bert and Michael were gracious enough to grant him that. So we want to shout out the Steelers PR department today.
Yeah, they're always good to work with. David Ramirez, too. We also worked with him and coordinated. So, and got to shout out just Tim in general because he's been at practice every day so far. I think he's back home right now. He may come back for camp later on, but he gave us some great photographs each day at practice, but especially whenever he's credentialed and can pull out his professional equipment. There were some great shots from the night practice that you guys can check out on the site.
All right, get us through the housekeeping portion. We got a lot to cover kind of today because we're going to be talking about what some coordinators said the other day prior to practice as well too. So bring people up to date on the transactions and the health of the team, if you will, please, Alex.
Sure. Let's start with the transactions, the last ones. So the new ones that we have not talked about on the podcast, the Steelers initially on August 7th, I guess that would have been Friday, claimed wide receiver Colton Dowell and tight end Lance Mason off of waivers. Mason came from Seattle, I want to say, and Dowell from San Francisco. And corresponding moves at the time, the team released, or waived, I should say, tight end J.J. Galbraith and wide receiver A.T. Perry. Perry made a couple plays in camp, so that was a little surprising, but this happens in camp. Rock Taylor was released midway through last year, which surprised us at the time, and Galbraith was really just having a quiet camp in his second year in the NFL and with the Steelers. And then the latest move, which happened just before we started recording the podcast Sunday, Dave, the team Steelers waived wide receiver Colton Dowell. So we at a very short stint, even by training camp summer standards for Dowell. He did not practice with the team on Saturday. I did not see the number 27 out there on the field. So the best of my knowledge, he did not practice at all with the team. Don't know why he was given to heave-ho so quickly. There is some sort of underlying reason, but regardless, he has been waived. So Pittsburgh currently has an open roster spot. You imagine they'll fill it by Monday's practice. That signing may not be known by the time Dave and I finish up the podcast, but Dowell on and then off the roster.
All right, Mason is an interesting name there for sure, especially when you look at his Wisconsin tape there. So here's hoping he lasts a few days into Thursday, so we can see him maybe get some late action in that first preseason game against the Packers. I snuck a peek at a little bit of his Wisconsin cut-ups there, and I think he's going to be a little bit more exciting to watch, at least from a blocking aspect, than maybe J.J. Galbraith. But we'll see, and obviously, like you said, we'll have we should have a corresponding move by the time Monday practice gets underway. So pay attention to the site or one of us on Twitter, and you'll be sure to get that news there. All right, what about the health of the team going into and out of the Saturday night practice?
Sure. The list is growing, which is common for this time of year of injuries and guys not working. So going into the night practice Saturday, those who did not practice at all: defensive lineman Sebastian Joseph Day, offensive tackle Maxie Honachor, defensive lineman Logan Lee remains out, ditto with Eli Heidenreich. Looks like right leg with Heidenreich. He's got a sleeve on that leg. Jaquan Brisker did not practice, nor did Brandon Eccles, who had a boot on his left foot ankle. Stephen Jones also remains out, as do the pup guys Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr., and Dante Kent. I know a boot sounds scary with Eccles, but that sometimes can be just precautionary, just walking around, taking the buses as the team did. And so that still could be a relatively minor injury, but we'll have to check his status. I believe McCarthy said he wasn't going to practice on Monday too, but we'll double check that hopefully when we're out of camp later today. In practice, the team, wide receiver Michael Pittman, this is kind of a one to keep an eye on. I noticed the head trainer was looking at him midway through, looked like the right leg, the hamstring. They were checking the back of his leg. He did not return to practice, Pittman, but neither did DK Metcalf. They were doing some run-oriented stuff, some backup stuff. They didn't do a true 2-minute drill to close out practice. So I don't think he would have come back in, but I can't guarantee that just based on how the last half of practice worked. So we're going to check his status for Monday, and I think that was basically it in practice. Anything that I missed, Dave?
Not off the top of my head there, but we'll obviously have a running total once you get out there. I think about 30 minutes into practice to know who's out there and who's not. Hate to hear it about Heidenreich, man. Well, it's so hard for rookies as it is, especially if you're drafted in, after the 5th round to make the team. And you got a guy like him missing valuable training camp time at Mike McCarthy said it himself, right? That last week, what was it? Thursday, Friday, Saturday practices were very important ones, or at least the most important ones up until this time, obviously with the pads coming on for him to not be able to participate he missed all 3, didn't he? I know he missed 2 at least. Did he miss all 3? Heidenreich?
Trying to think if he missed the first padded
Thursday?
practice. I can't, my days are running together,
Okay.
but he's missed several days now,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right. And we'll see if he's able to get back there out there on Monday. And man, you certainly would hope that maybe he could get in uniform for the first preseason game on Thursday night. But we'll see there. Ihanichor, Omar Khan didn't have a lot to say about injuries when he was on with the guys from Sirius XM NFL Radio on Saturday night. That was kind of running airing at the same time as practice was going on. He just said that he hopes to have Ihanichor back out there next week, meaning I guess anytime starting Monday. I don't think he mentioned anything on Eccles there, so we'll keep our fingers crossed with those guys, and obviously see what happens with Pittman as well.
Yeah, with Pittman, if it is a hamstring, the one thing I learned about training camp in my dozen or so years of going, hamstring injuries take a lot longer than you think for a guy to fully come back from. The team wants to be really cautious and make sure that 2-week injury doesn't turn into an aggravation that becomes a 6-week injury. And so hopefully Pittman, I mean, it didn't look super serious. He eventually was unattended by trainers. He kept his helmet off and he walked around okay, but even a minor pull, the team probably will be careful and cautious with, but we'll check him Monday. Maybe a chance he's out there practicing at some capacity. Also, Lorenzo Thompson got maybe dinged late in practice, the reserve offensive lineman. He was slow to get up. I didn't see trainers checking on him, but I want to double check his status and just kind of also monitor Keanu Benton's reps. I think as the Athletic reported, maybe he was getting looked at one point, but I know he was working at least in team and certainly in the individual sessions too.
All right. Before we get into the position groups and breaking a quick overview as we usually do on the special edition versions of the podcast, walk people through what transpired at practice. Kind of what was the flow of things.
I mean, it was a pretty similar structure to the way the other ones have been structured. You go through stretch line, they did some of their install work, they worked on a special teams period, they had an initial team period, then kind of broke off into some O-line, D-line, 7-on-7 work, and then went back into team period to wrap up the day. So, I mean, the flow of it was pretty much the same. There wasn't really anything new that was done that hadn't been already done before under Mike McCarthy.
All right, let's start with how the quarterbacks looked under the lights on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, it got off to a rocky start. Aaron Rodgers' first throw was jumped and picked by Jamel Dean, and he pick-sixed it the other way. But I thought after that, Rodgers was really excellent in practice. His pinpoint accuracy, how quick the ball was getting out. Not that Rodgers needs a lot of scrutiny this time of year. It's Aaron Rodgers, but just to kind of really look at his play in a vacuum. There was one throw. Is there a clip of it? I'm sure there is. It was a boot to the right to Darnell Washington.
Yeah, it's kind of a different angle, but you can still see that that was a laser.
That's one of the best throws I've seen Rodgers make in his time with Pittsburgh. Last training camp, regular season, and training camp this year. Just a crazy good throw. I thought Will Howard had a good practice. I thought he really showed touch and accuracy. I think he's been consistent. Yeah, I've seen some criticism of Howard. I'm not really sure where it's coming from. I mean, it's not like Howard's been incredible in training camp, but I don't know exactly where some of the critiques about him struggling and really just not having a good camp is really coming from. I know Drew Aller certainly can still spin the ball, and some of those go routes on air they were working. He was really, spinning the ball well, but still some misses underneath. And still, my big critique and gripe has been just some of the short, intermediate accuracy type stuff. A boot to the left to Robert Tunyon. He can't get his hips cleared, and the ball misses. Another one left sideline to Joaquin Davis, where the ball is behind. Maybe that was on Davis for not sitting. It's hard to say for sure, but still some of those misses that I have seen with Drew Aller. And Mason Rudolph was fine. There just was still sloppiness for the offense, whether it was the pick six on the first play. You had Caleb Johnson muff toss. You had a botched mesh point exchange from Will Howard and Lou Nichols in their 2-minute drill. And the defense, Kevin Jobody Jr. recovered, which ended the offensive drive, which was all of one play. So you just still had some of that sloppiness that's going to need to be cleaned up. Otherwise, Thursday's preseason game against Green Bay is going to be pretty bumpy.
When it comes to the two young quarterbacks, is it fair to say that both of them just have had okay camps up until this point, with just a couple of highlights and a couple of lowlights? I mean, I think a couple of days ago I asked you point blank, who I think it was coming out of or heading into the pads portion of practice there. You basically said, look, Drew. You said Drew Aller. You can see the traits there, so you'd probably have him ranked a little bit higher than Will Howard before the pads went on. What do you think about these two quarterbacks? And I know you tried to chart stuff as much as you can, and obviously without context, laying all that out in 30-minute discussion there, it's hard to quantify that. But since the pads have come on, how these two kids looked?
That's a good question. I'm just trying to take inventory of where I'd rank them. And I said before, I'm not too interested in the day-to-day who was better and who's running ahead of who. You're right. I think throughout the ramp-up period, the padless session, Aller looked better than Howard. I thought it got pretty even the first couple of days in pads between those two guys. And the last couple of days, granted, I did not see the Friday practice, but just from what I've seen, I would probably put Howard above Drew Aller.
Okay, interesting. But it's not like either one of those two kids have blown the doors off, right?
No, not like that. I think Howard.
And neither one has cost themselves a roster spot in the
Right.
meantime either, right?
Right, somewhere in between. I think Howard has been on an upward swing. I think Aller's kind of looked like the same guy throughout generally his practices. He has made good decisions in the sense he hasn't thrown a pick, again, from the sessions that I've seen, always putting in context me being absent, unfortunately, for the Friday practice. But, he has taken care of the ball in that respect. I just want to see the accuracy on some of the gimme stuff or the easier stuff get cleaned up. But I think Howard is certainly showing the touch and the accuracy, the placement in the short intermediate game. The arm strength isn't as good. He's not spinning the ball vertically the way that Drew Aller can. We already knew that just based off of their college tape. And I think they're both in a good place for where they should be. Howard's also, full year into the NFL, even though he didn't play a snap last year, but that still gives you an inherent advantage. And so I think both guys are probably where you would want them to be right now.
This is going to end up making this segment a little bit longer, but I don't care. You know me, take my watch off.
Mhm.
They were kidding with Aaron Rodgers about, I think it was on Sirius during the Sirius interview. I think Jacob Hester said, after you're done playing to Aaron Rodgers, can we get you to commit to going around to all these NFL teams and teaching them snap counts and cadences and all like that. And then they got into talking about how these kids come out of college now with the clapping
Mhm.
and not even having to call, and that ended up kind of being, it was a good question because it
It
got
was.
Aaron to it got Aaron to talk about it, and Aaron's like, I don't know, he said, look, this is just new football now, but he says, I don't see how they're able to do that. How can you even hear it? He named off all the big stadiums, and how can you hear that clap and all like that? I guess where I'm going with this now, with Will Howard at least having some practices last year and being around Aaron Rodgers and the cadence stuff from last year. And obviously, he didn't get to play in any preseason games and anything like that. But at least he did get to practice some after he came out back off of IR last year. How is there a difference in how both these quarterbacks, these young ones, look when it comes to the cadence and the huddle? Are you able to observe such stuff to see where maybe Howard might be a little bit more comfortable than that in Drew Aller? Or is that stuff that is just too hard to distinguish, especially where you sit?
It can be tough live. It's a really good question. I think we're going to learn a lot more about an answer to that come the game. It'll be the first game for both, and so we'll see if there's a difference between Howard as in his second year in the NFL versus Aller being that rookie. Will it feel different? I mean, I think both have done, from what I can tell, a good job at the line of scrimmage. Neither of them have that deer in the headlights type of look. They're getting in out of the huddle on time. I think Aller's got a pretty loud voice on his hard count, which is good. I think he's had really clean exchanges with, quarterback center exchanges. The handoffs have been, I think, generally good. Howard's had a little bit of issue there. And so just from what I can tell, I think they're both managing it well. They're also older quarterbacks too. I mean, Howard, was what, a 5-year guy. Aller's an older quarterback. These aren't necessarily 21, 22-year-olds coming out. That's why, not to take anything away, not to derail this even more, but, Carson Beck did really well in the Hall of Fame game. Like, really good, exciting, made some plays. But also, he's an older quarterback that played, 5, 6 years in college and played in national title games. You expect those guys to do well because they're older prospects or older rookies or older quarterbacks, whenever they declared. And so I think it's kind of their play, going back to Howard and Aller, reflective of them being more experienced, veteran, so to speak, type quarterbacks.
Where do you think, and you see it from several of these media guys already, except it's like they all try to push back in different ways against each other sometimes. One will go one way with the narrative, and the other one will try to, I guess, one up them. But I think the general consensus is that from most of them seems to be that Howard's not having a good camp, but you don't see it that way, right?
I don't, and I don't really pay much mind to what others are saying. I just go off of my notes and the charting that I do, which is not gospel, but helps put some context and some quantifiable numbers to the eye test. Yeah, that, like I said earlier, I don't really. If somebody can explain it, like, I'm willing to listen to what that argument is. It's not like Howard has undoubtedly wowed an
Right.
A+ camp, and oh my God, he is just going to be the franchise, the future of the franchise. But I mean, I don't really understand the case, or haven't heard a good articulation of how Howard is struggling and why he's struggling, and everything like that. I think it's been a just fine camp. That's probably ascending for Howard, is how I would describe his play so far.
All right. Let me throw a quote at you that Mike McCarthy had during his sit down with Pat Kerwin and Jacob Hester on Sirius, and I think this was recorded on Friday and aired on Saturday. They were asked. He was just talking about all the quarterbacks, and he got to Mason, and he said, "Mason, we've been kind of putting him just on limited reps. I gave him a little more in the beginning, but I've been extremely impressed with him. So I would be very confident playing with Mason." He says, I think you have to be realistic. You have to win games with your backup quarterback sometimes in this league. He says, he's definitely established himself that way, and you don't really know a guy from across the field until you get a chance to work with him. So I've been very impressed with him. Now, look, do you expect Mike McCarthy to come out and say, you know what? Mason, I didn't know him. I didn't know him too much before I came here in Pittsburgh, and he hasn't impressed me at all. No, you don't expect him to say that kind of stuff. But I found it interesting that he threw out there. I think you have to be realistic. You have to win games with your backup quarterback sometimes in this league. He's definitely established himself that way. Is there anything to be read into that?
I think, with us playing armchair psychologist with our degrees in the field,
Oh,
obviously,
my parents would finally be proud of me.
um, the way that it felt, and especially listening to it too, and I went back and made sure to listen to all the interviews, including McCarthy's, it sounded like he was mentally putting Rudolph in that number 2 quarterback camp. And to be fair, he's been the number 2 quarterback in camp right now, and so that's the role he's operated. It's the role he's had for the majority of his career. But the way he spoke was sort of basically saying that Mason Rudolph is our backup quarterback.
That's the way I kind of took it. Uh, and now look, you see what happened with the Lions earlier today with who was it?
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater going back. I imagine he's going to go back to coaching football again, high school or whatever. And then our buddy Josh Dobbs signing on there with them, but they've got three quarterbacks, and one of them is a kid I don't think that's even played yet in the NFL. And then obviously you have a guy in Dobbs who has bounced around the league, so that opens up an interesting scenario with potentially them looking for a quarterback as they get deeper into the preseason here. But yeah, that's kind of the way I took it as well too with Mason. So then assuming that we are reading this right, and there's no guarantee that we are, or at least things could potentially change, and you got all three preseason games, let's say Mason is indeed the number 2 guy. We get back into the conversation again of, what is the plausibility of this team keeping 4 quarterbacks? Because we know Drew Aller isn't going anywhere, other than one of these guys getting injured and going on IR for whatever reason. If they want to keep all 4, that's one way to do it. Or the other way is Will Howard just doesn't have a good preseason at all. He ends up getting waived, and they find a way to no other teams are interested in him, and he has interest in going to the practice squad. But as a 4 quarterback on here's another thing we haven't talked about either in talking about the 4 quarterback scenario. How in the hell, if you have 4 quarterbacks, even if one of those quarterbacks is on your practice squad, how are you going to get those young guys much reps other than the scout team, and even that's probably few and far between throughout the season?
Yeah, it's a fair question to ask, but the first immediate question is who's getting kept on the 53 is kind of just where I'm at right now. And if you can keep all those guys in your organization in some form or fashion, that's ideal. And so the first thought is, do you want to risk exposing a guy and having him go somewhere else, or potentially getting claimed? I still think the possibility of 4 quarterbacks has risen. I spoke about that the other day with you. I was going to write about it for the morning, but I saw the Post-Gazette write about it Sunday afternoon. I didn't want to feel like I was just in tow behind them, even though we've talked about it, and I think the odds are going up. So I canned the idea for now. So the question will come down to roster math. Obviously, keeping 4 quarterbacks is unusual. You have to cut somebody to do that, and kind of the math of it all. So who can you cut? It depends on how the roster looks and what's the health of this team at other positions. And do you have the quote unquote luxury to keep that 4th quarterback and take the spot of somebody else? We shall see. Could you play yo-yo with Robert Tunyon and have him on the practice squad to start and do the elevation game with him? Still have an inactive problem to think about for week 1, but there's still a ways to go to figure all that out.
All right, and obviously the next line in the sand is the first preseason game where we hope to see both those young kids play quite a bit. So,
Sure.
All right, we'll move on from quarterback and talk about the wide receiver position from Saturday night.
Yeah, I think the standout there, Dave, and I think he finally got a lot of love for the first time from kind of just local media across the board, is wide receiver Brandon Smith, number 87. Not a familiar name, but somebody who's run with the first group throughout training camp and really made some plays. Even in 7-on-7, a great diving catch, or Tim Rice has some great photographs of that. I'm sure the video is going around, making plays in 11-on-11, one ball kind of outside his frame to his left. He dove out, I think it was from Aller, and made the catch. And so this guy caught passes from, I think, every quarterback, made a bunch of plays. I don't know what his stats from the practice was alone, but I mean, he probably was the leading receiver by far. And so he's a guy that has a tough path to make the 53, but really feels like a good chance to make the practice squad if he can show something and have some sort of special teams value.
All right, we highlighted 2 kind of at least experienced wide receivers on the bottom of the top half of the wide receiver depth chart going into camp, and those 2 were Brandon Smith and A.T. Perry. And A.T. Perry is no longer part of this team, so that leaves Brandon Smith in the driver's seat. Obviously still probably got a long way to go, or needs a lot of help to potentially make the 53-man roster, but he's shaping up to be definitely a guy to watch once the preseason games get underway. You think he's going to play a lot, and then obviously probably a strong practice squad candidate.
It looks that way. It's certainly going in the right direction. So a guy that should also play a fair amount in the preseason, especially starting Thursday. And so we'll see from there. But he's got some experience too. It's just like he's not a rookie. He's not a second-year guy. He's played in the NFL before. So you expect those guys to be a little ahead of the rookies and the guys who've never really played in the NFL. He's gotten some regular season snaps with the Jets in past years. And so that certainly is, I'm sure, helping him, but making great plays all the same.
All right, talk to me about Roman Wilson and Jeremy Bernard's practice Saturday night.
Yeah, more nondescript, a couple of missed chances. Bernard had, I think, one drop and one double catch, and Wilson had I call it a drop. It was a low ball. It was contested well by Rayshon Jenkins, but a play that Roman probably should and is certainly capable of making. So it already feels like forever ago, the practice, but yeah, just nothing too crazy there on those guys.
All right. Well, you already mentioned Pittman and how we're going to be watching, see what happens with him on Monday to see if he's able to practice. Interesting note on him in a very, very short segment that he had on Sirius that was aired Saturday night there. And I think once again, that one was taped sometime on Friday, obviously before the Saturday night practice. He said, they asked him what his best camp moment is up until this point. He says, my best moment, I feel like it hasn't come yet. We're getting started, but I'd probably say the best moment so far is just getting to know everybody, just getting to know the guys and having fun between practice and after practice, playing cards and going places and having dinner. So he even admits he hadn't had his best, at least on the field camp moment yet. Doesn't sound like he really produced too many of them on Saturday. Not that I'm out here loud sounding the alarm bells or anything, but these final few days of camp, you want to see him kind of come alive a little bit, right?
Sure, it'd be reassuring to have a really good practice. We come back and rave about Michael Pittman made this play and this touchdown and outmuscled this guy and this vertical catch. But right now I'm just focused on his health. If he'll be out there Monday, but it has unquestionably, and even as Pittman admits, a very quiet start.
All right, running backs. No backers on backers to report from Saturday night. Talk to me about the what you saw out of the running backs on Saturday night.
Jalen Moore, another fumble. So I know that was an issue coming out of college and early in his NFL career that he sort of squashed the last 2 years or so. And so just want to make sure that doesn't become a habit. That's his second fumble this week. I don't know if the offense or defense recovered it. Talked about some of the sloppiness in the exchanges. Caleb Johnson not being able to haul in a toss and a botched mesh point with Howard and Lou Nichols. So just some of that sloppiness in practice, some of the fundamental stuff they're still needing to get down pat. And I don't want to harp on it more. It's been talked about so much. You're just kind of moving on. But the no tackling thing, we talk about it so much from the angle of we can't see defenders tackle. And obviously, I understand that point. You also don't get to see the break tackle ability of a running back or a wide receiver. And I'd love to be able to see that, Caleb Johnson, Lou Nichols, all these guys. And so we're kind of robbed of that other side of the coin too, not just the tackling, but how well do you avoid tackles. And that makes evaluation just naturally tougher.
And you'd obviously like to be able to observe that kind of stuff with a guy like Caleb Johnson, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Because obviously Warren and Rico Dowdle are going to be on this team, but the question marks start after that. Thought it was interesting. I don't want to get too deep into coordinator comments because we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. But Brian Angelico made sure to volunteer the name of Lou Nichols still as being in the mix, so to speak, when he talked to the media, I think on Friday.
Yeah, he's a sleeper name. I have an article going up that's already up on Monday, I should say, recording this Sunday night, that calls Lou Nichols one of the 5 sleepers of training camp, guys that aren't being talked about a whole lot, but guys that I think have done well. And it's like Brandon Smith, where do you find the path for 53? It's tougher to find. I think it's a little more open at running back than it might be at wide receiver, but a guy that had a really good preseason last year, averaged 8 yards per carry as a mid-camp ad. He had a really good college career. I think his junior year, he led the, FBS in rushing yards. And so there's some history there with that guy that can play on teams. Danny Crossman also shouted him out. So there's a lot to like there.
All right. How about the tight end position?
Yeah, Pat Frymouth continues to get his, and Aaron Rodgers looking his way frequently. He had one nice, I think it was Drew Aller that threw it. I wasn't 100% sure, but I think someone referenced Aller to Tunyon in 7-on-7, a really good fade ball that Tunyon brought in. And Lake McCree had a really good reception from Will Howard down the middle for about a 20-yard gain. So that was good to hear from McCree.
All right. Washington not having the amount of targets that maybe he had last year in camp. Is that correct?
I'd have to look at last year's. I didn't compare and contrast, but in my first 7 practices, so up until this past Thursday, Washington is just 3 targets in the 11-on-11 periods, the non-walkthrough versions at least. And so it has been quiet, especially compared to Frymouth, who I think was third on the team in targets.
All right, and I don't suppose Mason got a lot of burn in his first practice with the team. He's a guy that, once again, late in that game, hopefully he dresses and plays a little bit, even if it is on special teams. One that I'm looking forward to watch is maybe a practice squad candidate, even though he's a late addition to the roster.
Yeah, Lance Mason, to my observation, did not work in team. He did work in some of the individual drills, and so getting his feet wet. He had a good year at Wisconsin on a
Mhm.
bad Wisconsin team. He had 30 catches and 400 yards, and I think a couple of touchdowns too, and played well at Missouri State. He transferred up to Wisconsin for 2025, so we'll see what he can do. But there's something there with him.
Yeah, okay, it was kind of curious. I think Seahawks fans are a little bit curious as to why he got waived. I think Outson or somebody over there is dinged up. I think it came at there were some people that thought that Mason might have an outside chance to make their 53
Mm.
man roster with Seattle and at the worst be a practice squad candidate. Now, look, I mean, a lot of these are, like bloggers and all like that, but I think there was at least one or two media guys there that it seemed like they were a little bit surprised that Mason went out the door. Now, as soon as we say that, 2 days from now, Mason could be on the waiver wire like that, Dowell was hardly get to know you kind of guy. So it's dangerous to read too much into guys, inexperienced guys getting added this late in the offseason. But keep an eye on him if he makes it to Thursday night. All right, offensive line. What did you observe there? How is Broderick Jones handling things at this point in the middle of training camp now from a physicality and rep standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's conditioned to take a lot of reps. He's been double dipping left tackle and right tackle with lines getting a little bit shorter along the offensive line, but he had a really good one-on-one rep against Nick Herbig, where Herbig ended up on the ground. So it's good to kind of see that strength and power in Jones's hands because he certainly looks a little bit smaller. I'm sure getting his strength back after missing a lot of the spring activity and weight room especially. So just kind of good to have a solid practice for Broderick Jones.
All right. What about anything stick out with you with the rest of the offensive line on Saturday night?
Thought Dylan Cook had a couple of good reps against TJ Watt in one-on-one pass rush, pass pro drill. I thought Doug Nestor also had a couple of good reps against lesser, no disrespect, but lesser competition. Malik Harrison, Jamin Davis, guys who aren't naturally bendy around the edge. But I think Nestor with his position flex, playing up and down the line, is going to really have a chance to make the practice squad this year.
Are they seeming to think more of him as a tackle now at this point?
Yes, he's been playing left tackle, right tackle throughout camp. He's dabbled at center as well. I don't think in team that I've seen, but getting some of those early camp reps and one-on-one occasionally will, take snaps as a center or quasi center. So he's got a background playing guard, playing tackle, dabbling at center, really trying to maximize his versatility.
I would imagine probably the bulk of his snaps will be in Thursday night's game. Might be late and at tackle. Is that what you would suppose right now with Nestor?
That seems like a fair evaluation.
All right. I think that's got the offense. Nowakowski, what kind of practice did he have?
Just getting a lot of reps at fullback. I know Peyton Wilson popped him really good on one rep in the hole. So not a lot of catches for Nowakowski. I mentioned that in my training camp stats. I think only one technically leading up to last Thursday when I was charting it. Maybe he had one in Saturday's practice. I'm not quite sure, but you just see his hands naturally in drills and getting a lot of fullback work.
All right. Defensive line. What you got?
What do I have here? I thought Gabriel Rubio, good run D. Derek Harmon continues to be a menace against the run. Really good camp for Harmon once the pads came on. Really can kind of see his second year jump and how good he's been against the run. And I continued, and I might be the only guy talking about it. And I know that you have some camp guys, and not everyone makes it to the finish line. But Kyler Baugh catches my attention. I love the way he plays. High energy, high octane, kind of a dude, quick hands. I'd like to see him against some better competition. He's, beaten Greg Crippen pretty good, but I want to see him against, maybe McCollum and I don't know, just some higher level guys in the pecking order. But, him and Anthony Goodlow, you try to find ways to maximize your value. We talk about that a lot with running backs and wide receivers. Can you play on teams? Don't talk about that with D-line too often, but the new kickoff rules have allowed some of these big but athletic defensive linemen to play on kick coverage because you don't have to run 40 yards downfield anymore. You're running in a 5-yard space. And so in one rep in teams, you had Kyler Baugh and Anthony Goodlow running down kicks. And those guys are athletic and move really well for their size. And so it's not often you see a nose tackle running down kicks, but I think you're going to see Baugh and Goodlow, who plays end, do it this preseason.
All right. Good info there. And both those guys, I imagine, practice squad candidates there.
Yeah, I think Baugh especially, Goodlow's probably been a little quieter to my eye, but both obviously still have a lot of runaway to really state their case.
All right, inside linebacker, Peyton Wilson having a nice camp.
Really nice camp. Really been impressed by his play, just sort of what we talked about before, the downhill mentality, playing against the run. There was one where he shed Darnell Washington and made a run tag. Jack Soy had a good run stuff going back to the edge guys briefly as well. But yeah, I think Peyton Wilson really feels like a different kind of a guy where that light switch has flipped on, and you're really feeling that so far in camp.
All right, Patrick Queen, have a few moments here.
Let's see if I had Queen in my report. I don't know if I didn't have a lot in my report. I might have missed something. There might have been something in a 7-on-7 that I missed, but I didn't have many notes. Was there some buzz on
No,
Queen?
I'm just we
Okay.
haven't really talked too much about
Okay.
him. Malik Harrison still kind of the afterthought right now.
Yeah, still running behind. I guess ahead of Jacoby Women, but really running as the number 5 inside linebacker right now.
All right, what do you have if anything on the outside linebackers? You just hit on one of them there.
Yeah, Sawyer having some good team run defense. You saw some more of that 3 outside linebacker package where I think there might have been 5 linebackers on the field, 3 edges with Herbig off ball playing A gap or B gap, and then 2 inside linebackers. So we're seeing them sort of expand that package beyond just obvious pass rush moments where it's maybe 5 DBs and 1 defensive lineman and 3 linebackers on the field or whatever the math is. I guess 2 defensive linemen, but kind of continuing to see that expansion. I don't know if we're going to see it much in the preseason. That feels like a little too exotic to start doing that stuff in the preseason, but we'll see. And we'll see, obviously, if Watt and those guys play. But we're just kind of seeing, I think, an expansion of that look.
All right, defensive backs. The rookie Robert Spears Jennings seems to be continues to get a lot of burn.
Yeah, getting a lot of reps because, heck, with Brisker out, you're really running low at safeties, just guys who can play that are healthy. And so I think your starting safety pair yesterday, Elliott did work in some of the lighter team periods that I noted, but it was Jenkins and Spears Jennings. You got a 7th-round rookie and a guy that got here a week ago as your first teamers right now. So hopefully Brisker can get back soon. Don't know the element there, but a lot of reps. Castro's throwing his weight around. I love the way that Jenkins plays. I love his intensity, his energy. He's a hitter, man. He really pops. He's going to pop some undrafted rookie wide receiver in this preseason action and kind of introduce him to the NFL. So I think he's a guy that's really got a chance to make the 53.
All right, and I think you had a note on Jenkins as well too. Jenkins is wired a little bit differently, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of those screw loose safeties. I mean that in the nicest way, best compliment possible. Because, he's a real intense guy that's going to hit you, make you feel it. And I think again, it's always been his game going back to his Miami days throughout his career. So it's not anything new, but it's still fun to watch.
All right, what about some of the corners? Tell me about the Jamel Dean pick. Did a wide receiver fall down on that play?
It was away from me, so I couldn't see exactly how that interception came to be. I'm sure there's a good clip of it from somebody on the home stand. I was on the visitor side, so I just saw Dean jump and drive the route and undercut it and pick it off. So I don't know if the receiver slipped or if the pass was behind or miscommunication, whatever the case was. But yeah, I think all the concern about, Dean, he's struggled so much in camp. He's getting burned. Corners take their lumps. He's taken his lumps in camp a little bit, but he's made some good plays on the football too. And that was a big time moment to start and really set the tone for yesterday.
All right, who's a
for
guy
Saturday?
Okay, who's a guy at corner that that might be outside the bubble that probably bears watching a lot, that'll get a lot of burn on Thursday?
It's a good question. There's a couple of them, and the line's a little bit thinner there with Porter and Kent and Eccles, all the guys who probably won't be playing in the preseason game. You have Timon Lynam and Daryl Porter have gotten a lot of reps with the ones. They might see a lot of action. Dylan Everett almost had an interception shortly after Dean's pick, where Everett just dropped the pass. It was a very similar play where he jumped the route Everett did on a little out route to the sideline and just couldn't haul it in. So that was good. So, yeah, you're going to see those guys get a lot of burn, but we'll watch Porter Lyman and Danico Slaughter getting first-team slot reps, all the slot corners down. And so he's a guy that in nickel probably will be playing a ton as well.
All right, anything on special teams stick out to you Saturday night?
The big thing was watching the big guys run down kicks in Goodlow and Baugh. Laith Marjan missed wide left on a 45, 46-yard attempt on a kind of mini 2-minute drill. Return line, similar names there. Caleb Johnson continues to get work. You got Weegan, you got Roman Wilson, you got the new receiver, Jacoby Keeney James, also in that mix, but not a ton of special teams period. Just kind of tough to work that aspect on one field with everybody there. And so when you have limited space, you can't probably do as much special teams work as the team normally would do.
All right. Now that we've wrapped up, it's good that for the first time in a long time, we're not wrapping up two practices in one episode here. So I suppose we can move on to some things maybe that the coordinators had said on Friday there. With I guess we'll start with Angelico here. He didn't really. I think he was the less maybe forthcoming. I don't want to say forthcoming, but probably learned less from him during his media session there. He was asked about Roman Wilson having a good camp in terms of being involved, and he said, "Yeah, Roman's done a great job. I think it's really cool. Him and Aaron seem like they're on the same page. Their communication and where he needs to be with the concepts." He says Roman has really worked hard in his preparation and film study. I think he's playing a little bit more quieted mind, relaxed, and just going out playing football rather than thinking. When you're in the OTAs, everybody is learning a new system. Now we kind of call these recalls where we've installed it twice. Let's go out, and I think players are starting to get a little bit more comfortable each day and should get a little bit better. So that was his thoughts on Roman Wilson there. Jeremy Bernard, he says, I think Jerm is right where he needs to be, and he's just steady. I love his approach. I love his intentionality. I love his work ethic. He's smart. He says, like Adam Henry is moving him around. He's playing all three positions at the receiver position and handling it. He's been good, and you see him every day. He'll make a play. He's doing well. We're very happy where he's at. So that was Brian Angelico on the young wide receivers. He was asked about the competition for the third tailback spot. He said, yeah, that's something that'll play out, and we go through the preseason games, and that's where we're really excited to get those games. Those guys are all getting reps, and we'll see where that thing goes in the next 3 weeks. He was asked about Eli. How does Eli Heidenreich fit into that as far as maybe a running back, third running back, or sixth wide receiver? He says, yeah, like with all of our players, position flexibility, the more you can do is certainly beneficial, whether it's on special teams or playing offense, splitting out, playing in the backfield. He'll be included in the mix, and we're going to stress him as much as we can mentally and just see where things go. Well, we got to get him on the field first before you can start stressing him in that area there. Riley Nowakowski, he was asked about him. He says, yeah, he's done a good job playing tight end. He's handled multiple roles, playing on the line, off the line, in the backfield. He's capable, and you can see him getting more and more comfortable with each rep. But just like Jeremy Bernard, I'm pleased with where he's at right now as we sit in training camp.
Yeah, a lot of positivity here from Angelico, and you would expect him to, not take aim at anybody. And did he have any, I'm asking this sort of rhetorically because I'm sure neither of us really know, did he have any media responsibilities on a weekly basis in Minnesota as their pass game coordinator?
You know what? I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no idea either. I just say that to say, first time he's really ever had to deal with the media on a consistent basis. I know whenever he got hired in Minnesota or Carolina, they'd have like a little summer 10-minute, if that, conversation with him as kind of an intro thing. But then I'm sure he didn't have to speak with the media too much. And so he's not had a full OC role since his days at Ithaca, which is D3, not exactly the media pressure you're going to get in Pittsburgh. So I'm sure he's a little careful about what he wants to say and is going to be really positive about these guys. But I think he's generally correct about it all. Nowakowski being versatile and Bernard just learning all the positions and already knowing versatility well because he did so much at Alabama, playing everywhere and kind of being used every asset and just facet of the game there. Also had some really good praise for Drew Aller, talked about his poise, ability to retain information, and said when he makes a mistake, he corrects it immediately, which is so important for a young guy. All these guys are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You don't want to make it twice. Once you're told and corrected, you go out there and correct it the next time, and then kind of that's how you grow. You make a mistake, you learn from it, you get told what to do, and go out there and do it correctly the next time. And so you go back to that question about sort of command and poise, the line of scrimmage. I do feel that with Drew Aller because I'm not kind of seeing a guy that looks like it's too big for him.
All right. I think Patrick Graham's going to be a quote machine. He's the one that gives the most kind of more detailed, especially he talks about, seems to be more apt to talk about schematics and things of that nature. He was asked one question the other day. We've seen you use a lot of split safety looks so far in training camp. Traditionally, this team has been a lot of single high, middle of the field. What led you to that thought process there, and what are some of the pros and cons? He says, well, you look at the numbers from what we've called. I would probably say we've called more post safety in camp. I would say that, but for me, in terms of split safety, post safety, the split safety just gives you the ability to disguise some. You can disguise from the post safety as well, but I would say today's quarterbacks in this split safety, you can disguise what the weak safety is doing because they've been trained since high school to stare at that weak safety in the nickel position. It gives you a little bit more time to confuse the quarterback. That's my take. Then obviously from there, playing the run from there, because everybody in their mind goes to, hey, you've got to get it to single high to stop the run. You've got to remember how I was trained. You asked me my favorite call versus stop the run is cover two, but y'all know where I started at. So my answer for everything is cover two. But we don't do that all the time, but I love me some cover two. So that was an interesting. It's better to hear coming out of his mouth than mine. But he was later asked about talking about safeties, and there's some on the Steelers there as far as their career goes, like Jaquan and Rayshawn and Deshaun Elliott. A lot of them have been primarily kind of the strong safety roles in the defense where they've lined up. Is the lack of NFL free safety experience something that you guys look at as a thing to have to disguise or work around? Patrick Graham says it's our job to put them in the best spots for us when we're evaluating guys. So whether it's a new staff, for the guys that were here or acquiring a player from free agency, we're looking for traits. So if you search hard enough, you can find the traits. However the team is using them, or however they were used. If you can find the traits, that's what we're looking for. He says he knows that Joe Witt Jr. and Jason Simmons, he's known them for a long time. There's not too many people I can name in coaching I would trust more to get it right and coach them the right way. They do an excellent job. You just look at their track record. They know how to coach ball. They know how to coach DBs, and they know I don't want to coach them. I want to be able to spend my time with the front, meaning the defensive front. That's something that you've talked about through camp there. So a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Not justify. Just confirmation. Confirmation. Yeah, that he likes spending time with that front there. Anything else that kind of stuck out to you from anything that Patrick Graham had said?
We're going to like the Patrick Graham press conferences, Dave. We're going to have a good time, especially Terrell Austin, not exactly the most forthcoming guy and giving us some good information.
Keith Butler.
Butler gave us some good stuff.
Butler gave us better than
hospitality.
Than Terrell Austin did. But I think we're going to like Patrick Graham.
Yeah, so interesting answer there, and his affinity for cover two, which I assume is coming from the Belichick, Saban, Flores sort of background of it all. The blitz happiness certainly is an element of that. Flores especially is really fitting the NFL and where it's at right now. We're in a sort of a too high renaissance, which is coming from stopping explosive pass games. The Chiefs, when they in their heyday of their offense, and Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, teams had to play a lot of cover two to try to take away and force the short game, which kind of brought in some of the horizontal pass game, the increase of RPOs and all that. So yeah, I've not been able to chart how much one high and two high. Sounds like it's been more one high so far. We know Graham traditionally a little more two high. Pittsburgh had, I think, the sixth lowest cover two rate last year. I imagine that will go up, but we're going to see that. It'll be hard to really glean anything from preseason action because things are so vanilla. You're not really game planning. So, charting one high, two high, not going to be something you can really take to the bank for the regular season. But I imagine we'll see an increase there just based on where the league is at, Graham's background, and just stopping some of the big pass plays.
All right. Anything from Danny Crossman? I think there was a couple of things. Maybe he was the one that shouted out Lou Nichols.
Yeah, he was.
And not Brian Angelico. What stuck out from you as far as what Crossman said?
Yeah, I think to that point about that third running back position, and a lot of it I think will come down to special teams because obviously Dowdle and Warren are going to dominate the carries, barring injury, and so who can offer game day value beyond being a runner and playing their position. And you have, I think, a really good, fun battle there between Caleb Johnson, who's getting work on multiple units, Travis Homer, who's claimed a long NFL career, has been through special teams, Lou Nichols, who had played on all 4 units last preseason and will probably do similar this year, and then Eli Heidenreich, who's got a team's background and worked in kick return before dealing with that, leg injury of some sort. And so it's really going to be not that Crossman decides it because he doesn't have roster control, but there'll be a lot of input, and what he thinks about that third running back spot will probably play a role in determining who actually makes this team.
All right. He was asked, Ben Skoranek was a Pro Bowler for special teams. He has been one of those veterans helping some of the younger guys in the rooms. Crossman, I don't know if he shouted out his core guys here or not, but I think it's worth going over his answer. He says, yeah, he has. When you look at Ben Skoranek and you look at Travis Homer and you look at Cole Holcomb and you look at Carson Bruner, we really have a good group that's been here. And then even you bring in guys like Robert Tonyan and guys that are veteran players, but understand what it takes to play in the National Football League. If you're not that number one guy at your position, you better buy in, and you better buy in quick. That's how you're going to help the club. It's hard to read into preseason press conference transcripts at this, especially before your first preseason game. But I don't know. I might cut that answer out and hang that one on my wall there just for the
What do you
sheer.
think the relevancy is applying to a roster construction?
I mean, just looking at and look, not that there were a lot of questions about these guys anyway, but it feels like throughout his talk too, he's a big Travis Homer guy. Look, we know Ben Skoranek probably going to make this team. Carson Bruner was without a doubt, a solid special teams guy last year. It's hard to imagine him not making it. And Cole Holcomb continues to run in that kind of second string inside linebacker group, and he's had he's a quality special teams player. And then you throw in, he went out of his way to mention Robert Tonyan in here as well too. I mean, look, it's not like I'm Sherlock Holmes here, because a lot of these guys are probably on a lot of guys 53-man rosters at this point anyway. But you better have a good reason from going away any of these guys on your 53.
Yeah, I think the most interesting names are Homer and Tonyan because they were bubble guys going into camp. Tell me why anyone or you should not put Robert Tonyan on their next roster prediction. Is there a case to be made for him not making the 53?
I've run out of excuses.
That's what I was trying to get you to.
Yeah, I got nowhere else to go. I've got to right now. I have to put him on there. I don't think there's any way that you and look, as far as what I've seen on tape from in the blocking department in the past, especially in his most recent years, I'm not jumping up out of my chair with any other performances, nor so as far as the little bit of special teams on there. But I mean, look, how many tight ends actually make a lot of tackles on special teams anyway? Not a lot. It's the little things that you do, and not showing up on the highlight tape as a negative can just as easily get you on a special teams unit, right?
And you can be a blocker. You can be a blocker on the kick return unit, and there's going to be value there. A lot of tight ends play that role. It won't show up on the stat sheet, but it certainly has its play. So that coach likes you, the special teams coordinator likes you, the quarterback likes you. I like the odds of Tonyan making it. The only thought would be, like I said earlier, maybe he's one of those yo-yo guys where the initial 53 he's cut because you need to keep another guy for a day to. If you were going to move him to IR, I know you can't do the 2 immediate IR to return slots, but last year they did that with one guy, and then I think Howard stayed for a day. It was one where one guy went to IR right away on cutdowns, the other one stayed for a day for some reason, something like that. So maybe there's a little bit of veteran yo-yo because he won't be subject to waivers, Tonyan, and so if you need an extra spot for a day for whatever reason, if you want to have 4 quarterbacks on your roster for another day, I don't know, but that's a possibility. But I think when week 1 kicks off, Tunyon will be dressed in part of the active game day roster against Atlanta.
Yeah, look, I did not have him on my pre-camp 53. He will be, if you get me to reveal that I'm putting him on my 53 now. Yeah, I am right now. And I think as we get it through these preseason games, we'll see how the injury situation looks like, to see, if they need more than 2 to go to IR. Obviously, we'll be having discussions at that time how maybe some of the housekeeping might go there at. But I what I'm getting at here is I think that's a real powerful response there, and especially Travis Homer too. I mean, have you seen anybody? I mean, is there anybody on this roster right now that feels like they can push Travis Homer for not? And who cares? I mean, running back, obviously, you got to be able to have that trait, but this guy is the personal protector until he's not, right?
Yeah, I mean, the other guys who've gotten reps so far in camp are Heidenreich, who's hurt, and Hurlman, who's unlikely to make the 53.
Okay.
And so it just, I'm still not 100% sure. Caleb Johnson's still in this mix, and he's been increasing his team's value, but we're still kind of watching this. I know you're going to put Tunyon on. I'm trying to think who you're going to remove, because I don't know who you're going to take off your 53.
I think I had Heidenreich on my pick because I had all the draft picks in there. So Heidenreich.
Did you have Homer on yours too?
I think I had Homer on there, didn't I, or no?
I can't remember.
I don't remember either. Maybe I didn't. I'll have to go. I don't have it in front of me here right now. But Homer's. If Homer was off of my first one, he's going to be on my second one.
I'm going to try to check now, because if you had 4 running backs, then that's an easy swap, Tunyon for Heidenreich. If not, then you're going to have to put Homer on there too. No, you did have Homer and Heidenreich. So Heidenreich for Tunyon is probably going to be your thought there, it sounds like.
At least one change right there. What was the other about the Gunners that I think he had mentioned somebody else. He talked about Brandon Eccles, didn't he?
Yeah, basically confirming that they're the starting Gunners, which is consistent with our reporting in training camp.
Okay, so Eccles and Skoranek, at least right now, seem to be the team starting Gunners, right?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if it wasn't those two against Atlanta, unless there was an injury to either individual.
All right. Anything else from Danny Crossman?
No, I think that covers it well.
All right. All right. Where to from now?
Anything else to talk about, Dave? I think we recapped it pretty good. The team will practice later today. Hopefully, we'll be able to see that in person. So, without further ado, unless there are other adieus, let's get to some reader emails, Dave.
All right, adieu. Jason Michael, Saturday Night Lights in the emails here. Just wanted to say thanks for all the great coverage of training camp every year. Catching up on all the special edition recaps helps make my 50-mile commute to work a lot more bearable. All right, that we've been filling up his commute there to work there. He says the wife and I just left our first training camp practice at Latrobe Memorial Stadium, and we had a great time. We sat 3 rows behind Alex, but he looked like he had his hands full trying to keep up with everything that was going on, so I didn't want to bother him. Looking forward to another great season of coverage from the SD team. Alex, you've reached status where people don't want to interrupt your dinner.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment. Definitely say hi if you see me next time or another camp after practice. You certainly say hello. I would appreciate that. But thank you for respecting my working. But yeah, that's very thoughtful.
Are you going to pull a J.J. Watt here and meet him at a bar or something and buy him a beer or something?
yeah. Let me know your location. We'll get a Twitter photo, make it go viral.
Nah, Jason, we appreciate the shout out there, and glad you and your wife were able to go out there and take in that practice. I'm sure it was pretty exciting. You probably had great seats if you're somewhere close around where Alex is, because Alex doesn't get himself cheated there. Did you get there in enough time to get a nice seat? I imagine. Is that where you normally sit, or what?
Yeah, I said no one cares. This is the first world problems. No one cares. I got there pretty early, but they changed the stadium. You couldn't go behind the track where I usually go, and I couldn't go across the stadium to the visitor side at first because they had it closed off before the players got there.
Don't they know who you are?
Yeah, I said that, and they went, "We don't know who you are." No, I didn't say that. So I had to wait a little bit to get to the visitor side. It got a little crowded. It was fine. I got about my usual spot, so it's all good.
All right, let's see. Ryan Kelly writes in, Question about McCarthy. It's evident that Coach McCarthy is very meticulous and detail oriented. He seems to expect precision and execution down to the smallest possible detail. The Steelers haven't been coached quite like this since arguably the Chuck Noll days. This all sounds well and good, and I hope to see a more modernized and precise football team this season, but I can't shake off this feeling that he's overdoing it and that it will result in football team who suffers from paralysis by analysis. The changes are so drastic. I just wonder if the team can absorb it in one off season. He says Tomlin ran the program a certain way for 19 years. Bill Cowher ran a similar program in his 15 years. Neither coach was particularly known for precise schematics. Am I wrong to be concerned? He says, from what you've seen at camp, does it seem like the players are fully bought in and executing with precision we think McCarthy is expecting at this stage? Thanks for taking my question and for your coverage of the Steelers. Nobody does it better than you guys. Ryan from Virginia Beach. He's Virginia Beach from Tomlin area, right? All right. I certainly you'll be better at potentially answering that question.
Yeah, those are all good questions. I mean, a lot of it's going to be just results oriented. If the team does well, then everyone bought in and the approach works. If not, then it didn't work. But it's hard to tell if they've bought in, from just watching a training camp. I mean, I don't see any evidence against it, but you bring a new head coach, they're going to have their way of doing things, and that's just natural. So that's going to be expected no matter who the hire was.
The sausage can be made in a lot of different ways, right? There's not one true
Hmm.
way to make sausage, right?
Exactly.
Look, the way Mike Tomlin made sausage at the very least produced winning seasons. Not that anybody needs to be searching for those bumper stickers, especially since 2016, but did. Yeah, and look, yeah, let's face it here. This is the first time the Steelers have had an offensive minded head coach. So I imagine it's an offensive coach is probably is going to be or maybe appear to be a lot more detailed uh, when you're talking about the team that has the ball, coaching the side that has the ball more, right?
Yeah, it's a different philosophy, it's a different background, but you knew the type of head coach that you're getting. You're not hiring some sort of first-timer, unknown head coach. You're kind of feeling out his process. And listen, Mike Tomlin, his first year had his missteps. He ran that team into the ground. He admitted that. The players talked about how difficult training camp was, and Tomlin trying to really sort of assert authority for this young head coach, youngest head coach I think ever at the time, to show that he was in charge. I will say, though, to the reader's point, that first year is always so hard because there's so much new with the coaching staff, for the head coach just trying to learn about the team and get his feel for the organization. It's just so much to do in that first year. And so I know that could be certainly a challenge for McCarthy in any first time or any first year head coach in a new place. And so I wonder if there'll be a consequence to that. But that comes with the territory. Your head coach resigned. You had no say over that. So you gotta roll with it, and we'll see what McCarthy can do.
And in the end, football is still football. It's not like it's not like there's other than maybe attention to more to detail, which maybe this. Let's face it, maybe this team needed this on both sides of the football, more attention to
Sure.
detail,
Sure.
especially with so many returning. Because look, you got a lot of returning guys on this team. We've talked about it as well too on the offensive side and the defensive side of football. Now, a lot of the depth pieces has changed, and that's the case around the NFL every year, where probably at least a third of your roster is going to change over every year there. So there's a lot of things to potentially be worried about maybe when it comes to 2026 Steelers. Right now, Mike McCarthy maybe being more meticulous and on the finer details, I think is way down on my concern list, right?
Yeah, I mean, generally those are things you want, and you could argue the team was lacking some of that real detail, discipline in a lot of regards. So I don't see those as inherently bad things. There may be a growing period and adjustment to it, but I think those are things you're looking for when you want the head coach who's going to think about those details, and an experienced coach who knows what those details are and how beneficial they can be when they're done and focused on correctly.
All right, thanks for that email. One last one. It looks like a hypothetical from Brian Tellini. I think Brian likes these hypothetical ones. He says, Happy Friday, Dave and Alex. This one came in on Friday before we had that show. He says, excellent camp coverage as always, Alex. He says, just one for today that probably isn't realistic, but I have always liked Vita Vea. And I'm curious as to what you think of him as a fit on this team. Let's just pretend we can acquire Vita in a trade to complete the deal. The Buccaneers want Y.A. Black and a second-round pick. Do you accept the deal? Obviously, if you're doing this deal, it would require giving Via an extension, so it would have to be worked out as well. But just curious on your thoughts. I mean, I understand we're supposed to say, assuming this was to happen and all, it's still hard to get around the aspect of whether or not we think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Vita's a great player, but he is up there in age. You would have to pay him handsomely, probably easily as a top 5 defensive tackle in the league. And if he says I have to give him Y.A. Black in a second round pick plus give him the contract on top of it, I'd rather, I think, take my chances with what I got and move forward.
Same. I wouldn't do that deal. Vea's a good player, but probably not the elite player that he was a couple years ago. He's 32. You're getting older as a defense for an old defense. You still potentially could pay Benton if you're paying Vea, then Benton's as good as gone. Black's, there's a lot of optimism about him. I have optimism about the run defense in general with Harmon and Y.A. Black. So no, I would not do the terms of that deal.
All right, that's all the 3 emails that I have, I think, here in the box. We have recapped Saturday practice. We have talked about the health of the team. We've talked about transactions. We talked about what the 3 coordinators had to say. We mixed in a few comments from the serious interviews, which, by the way, if you missed anything with those serious interviews and you don't have serious, which you should, it's a great channel. They have some great interviews, I think, even though Jim Miller's no longer part of Pat and Jim doing the training camp stuff. I didn't know what to think about potentially Jacob Hestard being part of that, but I thought he did a great job overall. We have recapped all the notable things to come out of all those interviews the other night. They're all up on the site. Aaron Rodgers continues to speak glowingly about Mason McCormick, what a leader he is. Talked about, obviously, Zach Frazier and what a great center he is. So that's uplifting going into the season as well. But if you missed any of that, we've got a lot of that recapped on the site. Alex's diary from Saturday night is up on the site and will be up on there, probably stickied up until Monday practice gets underway. Alex, weather permitting, will be out there on Monday. He will be back with me Monday evening for us to recap that practice as we get closer to the Steelers' first preseason game on Thursday there. So it's an exciting week ahead of us here on the site and for the podcast as well, too. So you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, hit SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, and follow the directions that way. Good job, Alex. Can't wait to get back with you on Monday evening. And until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.